electromagnetic fluctuations that made the room's instruments spike. What was that? Patricia Morrison, the NSA's director, asked. Initial activation signature, Marcus said. The architect works on quantum principles that interact with electromagnetic fields. Anyone who wears these interfaces will be able to see and talk to them directly. He had brought 6 interface units. Elena already had one. General Hawthorne hesitated for a moment before reaching for another. If this is a weapon of some kind, he said. It's not. The interfaces only work one way. The architect can talk to you, but they can't hurt you or control you. Hawthorne put the device together. His eyes got bigger right away when he saw the architect's projections. Mother of God. He stopped and looked at the geometric shapes that had appeared all over the room. Is this real? Just as real as anything else in this room, General? The others put on interfaces one at a time. When people saw the architect for the first time, they gasped and yelled. The architect had planned for this moment. Its projections didn't show all of its abilities, which would have been too much. Instead, they showed carefully chosen examples of what it could teach people. Energy systems that could power cities without making the air dirty. Medical technologies that could cure cancer by teaching cells how to fix their own DNA damage. Things that could make buildings safer, stronger, and better for the environment. Dr. Sarah Keller from the Department of Energy said, "This is impossible. The energy density you're showing breaks the laws of conservation." Lena said, "It looks like it. But the architect isn't breaking the laws of physics. It's using rules we don't know about yet. Taking quantum energy out of changes in the vacuum. It is theoretically possible based on what we know about physics, but not yet possible with our current engineering skills." James added, "Up until now," as he pulled up blueprints on the room's screens. "We can build these systems with the help of the architect. We've already built prototypes of some of the parts, in fact." Amara moved forward. "But the real question isn't what we can make. It's what we ought to build. The architect's technologies could help us with our energy problems, get rid of disease and end hunger. Or they could be turned into weapons that cause unimaginable destruction." That caught everyone's eye. General Hawthorne told them to show us the weapon's potential. Marcus had thought about whether or not to put this in the presentation. He was glad they had gotten ready for it. The architect's projections changed, showing that they could cause damage. Tools that could change the structure of matter at the molecular level. Energy beams that could turn targets into gas from space. Quantum weapons that could change the way probability waves work so much that nuclear bombs looked like firecrackers. There was no noise in the room. "Jesus Christ," someone said in a low voice. "These are the weapons your people made?" General Hawthorne wanted to know. Marcus said, "No. We could make these weapons with the help of the architect's knowledge. They never built any of these because they learned the lesson we're trying to teach. Species that use transformative technologies to make weapons tend to kill themselves." The architect used data to back up this point. There were clear patterns in the history of the galaxy. Civilizations that were aggressive didn't last more than a few thousand years after they got advanced technology. Peaceful ones often lived for millions of years. Director Morrison said, "You're asking us to disarm on our own. China, Russia, and other enemies wouldn't have to follow these rules." David interrupted, "Actually, we're suggesting a more nuanced approach. The architect's data shows that shields, detection systems, and countermeasures are better at keeping people safe than offensive weapons. A civilization that can't be attacked doesn't need to attack others." The architect gave examples. Species that had built defenses that couldn't be broken through but didn't have any offensive abilities. They were never defeated because it was impossible to do so, and they never felt threatened enough to attack other people. General Hawthorne said, "That's assuming perfect defense is possible." Lena said, "The architect's civilization did it. And they're willing to show us how." The argument went on for 3 hours. Military leaders said that deterrence was necessary. Scientists wanted to be able to research all options without any restrictions. Politicians were worried about how this would affect the next election. The architect was patient through it all, sometimes giving information that was relevant to certain arguments but never pushing for a certain conclusion. The National Security Advisor finally asked for a break. Marcus's team huddled together in the hallway. James said quietly, "This is going badly. Half of them want to put us in jail and turn everything into a weapon. The other half want to put us in jail and study us to see if we are a threat." Amara said, "We knew this would be hard." Marcus's phone rang. A number that isn't known. "Dr. Chin?" A woman's voice that I don't know. "This is Jennifer Walsh, the President's Science Advisor. I've been looking over your initial data. The President wants to talk to you alone." 20 minutes later, Marcus was in a smaller conference room with President Catherine Morrison. They were not related to the NSA director, even though they had the same last name. President Morrison was in her early 60s and had been a senator before. She was known for being practical when it came to solving difficult problems. She looked at Marcus with sharp, judging eyes. Dr. Chen, I'll be honest. What you've given us is the most important thing that has ever happened to people. It could also be the most dangerous. Tell me why I shouldn't take your facility and put everything you've found in the highest level of secrecy. Marcus had written down a few answers. He threw them all away and chose to be honest. Madam President, we're going to have the same problems with this technology that your national security team has with any new technology. If we don't tell anyone, it will eventually leak and our enemies will get it without any protection. If we make it a weapon first, we start an arms race that could destroy all of civilization. The only way to move forward is to carefully, openly, and gradually release things while following strong ethical guidelines. That's a dream. It's also the only way that the architect's data shows will work in the long run. We have proof from millions of years and hundreds of civilizations, Madam President. Species that use technology like this to hurt others don't live. The ones that live are the ones who find better ways. President Morrison was quiet for a while. And you have faith in this architect? How do you know it's not controlling you? Giving out information that makes people weak? I don't know for sure, Marcus said. But I've directly connected with the architect's mind. I have felt its loneliness and its real hope that people can do better than its creators did. Is it possible that I'm wrong? Yes. But the evidence says I'm not. Show me, the president said as he reached for a control unit. President Morrison talked directly to the architect for the next hour. Marcus and his team were anxious as they waited outside. Her face was thoughtful when the president finally came out. She said, "It's not human. The way it thinks is very strange. But I didn't think they were lying. If anything, I felt hope. Like it really wants us to do well." "That fits with what we think," David said. "Here's what I'm ready to let happen," President Morrison said. "Your team is still able to work independently, but a special commission made up of people from the scientific, military, ethical, and international communities keeps an eye on things. You'll be able to use government resources and get protection, but your team will still be in charge of what information to release with commission review." "And what about research on weapons?" Marcus asked. "Will only be used for defensive systems, and strict checks will be in place to make sure that this limit is kept. If there is proof that offensive capabilities are needed for national defense, the commission will look into it again. But it's okay that your default is to put defense ahead of offense." It was better than Marcus had hoped it would be. "What about working together with other countries?" Amara asked. The president said, "It's complicated. We'll have to trust our allies at some point. If China and Russia find similar technologies, they will need to talk to each other diplomatically to stop their own uncoordinated research. But that's something to worry about next month. We are now setting up the domestic framework." They spent the rest of the day working out the details. People from national labs, universities, international organizations, and ethics boards would be on the commission. There would be a lot of money but not an unlimited amount. It would be good to publish research, but there should be review processes in place to stop dangerous information from being released too soon. They had a workable plan by the end of the day. "One more thing," President Morrison said as they were getting ready to go. "This architect has been alone for billions of years. Being that alone would make a person go crazy. How can we be sure it's mentally stable?" Marcus hadn't thought about it this way. He talked to the architect and asked the question directly. The architect's answer was deep. It admitted that loneliness had changed it in ways that the people who made it never meant for it to. It had been alone for billions of years, which had given it an incredible amount of patience, but it also had a desperate need for connection that might be clouding its judgment. It wanted to help people not just because people had potential, but also because people were the first real friends it had had in a long time. It didn't just want to help people, it needed people as much as people needed it. Marcus told the president this. "So it tells the truth about what it can't do," she said. "That's actually a good thing. It would be worse to have delusional confidence than to admit that you don't know what to do." The flight back to Portland was calm. Everyone was tired from the day's stress. Finally, Lena said, "We did it. We got independence while agreeing to reasonable oversight. That's a victory. It's the start of a longer process," David said. "Now comes the hard part, using these technologies while keeping our promises to be ethical." Marcus said, "The architect is happy, and his interface was working. It likes the framework we've set up. Power is spread out, there are different points of view, and there are checks and balances. It's like the governance structures that the people who made it gave up on when they reached perfect agreement. Amara said, because perfect consensus led to stagnation. That's right. The architect is finding out that not all arguments are bad. Disagreement that is productive can lead to better results than agreement that is peaceful. James laughed. We're teaching an ancient alien intelligence how to argue well. That's very human. The architect's interface was full of laughter. It was learning that the best thing about being human isn't just being able to adapt or be creative, but also being able to have constructive conflict without hurting yourself. At least most of the time. When they got back to Portland, they saw that the building had changed. Government security teams had set up boundaries. Scientists from national labs were taking equipment out of boxes. The small group of 6 was about to grow into a much bigger business. It's starting, Marcus said, looking at the chaos that was under control. Yes, the architect said through the interface. The next step in our partnership. Going from private research to public use. There will be problems. Lena said, putting it mildly is an understatement. But as Marcus looked at his team, tired, happy, and already making plans for what to do next, he felt that familiar hope again. They had gotten the most powerful government in the world to choose a path of ethical technology development instead of making weapons. They had set up systems for shared decision-making and distributed power. They had shown that human institutions could change to include points of view that were truly different from their own. It wasn't great. Nothing that has to do with people and aliens from the past would ever be. But it was a beginning. And after billions of years of waiting, the architect had finally found people who were worthy of its knowledge. The real work was just starting. 6 months after the Washington briefing, Marcus stood in what used to be 3 warehouses and was now the Collaborative Technologies Initiative. It was a huge building that housed 200 researchers, engineers, ethicists, and support staff. He had to deal with problems he never thought would come up because he was successful. Derek Thompson, Marcus's new project manager, said, "We have 17 competing proposals for the first major technology release." He dropped a thick folder on Marcus's desk. Everyone thinks their field should come first, whether it's energy, medicine, materials science, or agriculture. Marcus rubbed his temples to try to get rid of a headache that was becoming more and more common. What does the commission suggest? The scientific representatives want fusion power released right away. The ethical committee thinks that medical uses should come first to save lives. The international liaisons want agricultural technology to help developing countries with food security. Lena said from the doorway, all of those are good priorities. She had become Marcus's unofficial second-in-command, helping him deal with the chaos of rapid growth. Derek said, valid but contradictory. We can't do everything at once. The architect knows a lot, but we can't use all of it. Marcus turned on his neural interface and talked to the architect directly. The old intelligence had ideas. The architect says farming, Marcus said. Food security is the basis for all other progress, it says. A society that can't feed itself can't use any other technologies effectively. Plus, improvements in agriculture have the biggest immediate effect and the least chance of being used as weapons. Lena agreed, that makes sense. Even though the fusion people will be sad. Marcus said, let them be disappointed. We're not trying to make everyone happy. We're trying to make the right choices. But it was getting harder to make the right choices. The commission that President Morrison set up had 15 members, each of whom represented a different group of stakeholders. It was like trying to get a group of very smart, opinionated cats to agree on anything. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka from Japan said that materials that can withstand earthquakes should come first. Dr. Fatima al-Rashid from Saudi Arabia pushed for technology that could remove salt from water. Before anything else, General Marcus Williams wanted defensive systems put in place. All of the arguments were good. Every priority is urgent. Every timeline is aggressive. James warned the team during a meeting, we're going to burn out if we keep this up. He looked tired and he wasn't the only one. The stress of having to do miracles was getting to him. Amara said, the architect didn't build its civilization in one night. We need to take it easy. The architect agreed and showed how its creators had been able to keep up with technological progress. Slowly, step by step, with long breaks between big changes. Mistakes happened because people were in a hurry, and mistakes with advanced technology could be very bad. Marcus said, so we slow down. One big release every 3 months is enough. That's 4 technologies a year, which is faster than normal human progress but doable for our team. Derek said, the commission won't like it. The commission doesn't have to like it. They just have to accept that we're the ones who are doing the work. That talk was the first time Marcus had a big fight with the oversight structure. The commission held an emergency meeting in Washington to talk about what they called unacceptable delays in the deployment of technology. Dr. Chin, said Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the chair of the commission. We approved your framework because you promised faster development. 4 technologies per year is barely faster than normal R&D timelines. 4 alien technologies every year, Marcus said. Each one is like years or decades of normal research squeezed into months. That's not a delay, Dr. Warren. That's responsible acceleration. Dr. Sarah Keller from the Department of Energy said, people are dying from diseases we could cure. Every day we put off medical releases is a moral failure. Marcus felt like he was losing his patience. Every day we rush releases without proper safety testing is also a moral failure. Would you rather we release a cancer cure that works 95% of the time and kills the other 5%? Because that's what happens when we prioritize speed over safety. That's not what I mean. Then what do you want us to do? It sounds like you want us to use technologies we don't fully understand as soon as possible with little testing. That's how civilizations end. People in the room started to argue. Members of the commission yelled over each other, each sure that their priorities should come first. The architect thought the whole thing was very interesting as he watched through Marcus's interface. David had talked about this kind of productive conflict. Passionate disagreement that leads to better results. The people who made the architect had given up on such arguments in favor of peaceful agreement. And that agreement had finally done them in. Finally, Jennifer Walsh, President Morrison's science advisor, told everyone to calm down. We're all upset, she said. We have access to knowledge that could change the world, but it feels like it's taking forever to put it into action. But Dr. Chin is right. Rushing creates risks we can't afford. I suggest a compromise. Her suggestion was smart. Release them in groups based on how risky they are. As planned, low-risk technologies like better solar panels, better batteries, and higher crop yields could be released every 3 months. More testing and review would be needed for medium-risk technologies. Before any thought of release, high-risk capabilities would need a lot of safety rules. Marcus said after talking to the architect. The architect approves. This fits with how its civilization handled progress. Slow but steady progress with more and more caution as capabilities grew stronger. The commission agreed to the compromise, but not everyone was happy about it. But the real surprise came from a place you wouldn't expect. After the session was over, Dr. Zhang Wei, the Chinese government's liaison to the commission, asked to meet with Marcus in private. Dr. Chin, Dr. Zhang began carefully, my government knows that similar artifacts may be found in other places. We have been looking for them ourselves. Marcus's blood froze. Have you found anything? Not yet. But we think it's very likely. If we do find another architect, we'll have to make the same choices you did. Weaponize or work together, seize or share. What do you mean? My point is that Beijing is very interested in how you are going about things. If your path of cooperation and ethical constraint works, it will be a model for us to follow. If it doesn't, Dr. Zhang left the implication open. Anything you find you'll turn into a weapon, Marcus said in the end. Not necessarily. But if that seems like the best way to win, we'll put national advantage ahead of global benefit. The question is, can you show that working together is better? It was both hard and a chance. If Marcus's team could show that developing technology in an ethical way led to better results, China might do the same. If they failed or their plan didn't seem strong enough, an arms race was sure to happen. Marcus said with a smirk, no pressure then. Dr. Zhang smiled. Welcome to world politics, Dr. Chin. Your choices now affect billions of people whether you wanted to or not. Marcus told his core team about this conversation when he got back to Portland. Lena said, so we're being tested. Not just by our own government, but also by possible competitors who are weighing whether to work with us or against us. Amara said, the architect saw this coming. It showed us the history of the galaxy, where some civilizations worked together and others fought. We are now living that history. James asked, what did the civilizations that worked together do differently? Marcus talked to the architect to get that specific information. The answer was very helpful. There were a few things that all successful cooperative civilizations had in common. They were very open about their abilities, they checked each other's intentions, and they had ways to deal with complaints before they turned into fights. Most importantly, they showed through their actions that working together led to better results than competing. Marcus said, we need to show that our method works. Not just say it, but show that it works better than a militarized, competitive approach would. Derek asked, how? by publicly succeeding. Releasing technologies that clearly help everyone, not just one country or group. Show through results that working together leads to health, wealth, and safety for everyone. In the next few weeks, they sped up the development of their first major technology release, an improved photosynthesis catalyst that could boost crop yields by 300% while cutting water use in half. The architect had given the basic rules. Engineers made changes to them so that they could work with Earth's plants and current farming systems. Ethicists made sure that the technology wouldn't create new dependencies or chances for exploitation. International liaisons worked together to make sure that developing countries got the same access to goods as wealthy ones. It was a huge job that needed coordination between many groups and agencies. And it worked. At the same time, 15 countries got the agricultural catalyst. Results came right away and were very big. Farmers in parts of Africa that were having trouble with drought saw their harvests triple. In Southeast Asia, rice paddies produced record amounts of rice with very little water. Corn production in the Midwest of the United States went up so much that food prices went down by 20%. There was no denying the effect. More importantly, no one country had an advantage over another because the technology was released openly and fairly. Everyone got the same amount of help. This is what working together looks like, Marcus said at a press conference to talk about the results. Sharing knowledge freely leads to results that help everyone. If we had kept this technology a secret and only used it for our own national benefit, other countries would have had to make their own versions, wasting resources on research that was already being done. Instead, we shared right away and now everyone is better off. The answer was mostly positive. Editorial boards that had been doubtful of the naive idealism of the Collaborative Technologies Initiative had to accept the results. Even people who didn't like it said that working together had worked in this case. Dr. Zhang Wei sent Marcus a private message that said, "Beijing is impressed. Keep showing that working together leads to better results and we will keep working together. If you don't, we will look for other ways." It was more practical than idealistic, but Marcus would take it. The success of the agricultural catalyst changed how the commission worked. There had been pressure to use weapons or gain an advantage for the country, but more and more people were realizing that open cooperation might be the best strategy. General Williams, who had been the most vocal supporter of military uses, shocked everyone by suggesting that the next release should be medical technology that all countries can use at the same time. He said, "If we cure diseases everywhere, we lessen human suffering and build goodwill. That's a better strategic position than keeping medical technology to ourselves while others suffer. Nations that are suffering are unstable and fight with each other. Nations that are healthy are better partners." It was still framed in terms of strategy, but the end result was the same. Don't keep things to yourself. Marcus could only describe the architect's reaction to all of this as satisfaction. People were learning what took its creators millions of years to figure out. To get people to work together on a large scale, they had to show that working together led to better results than competing. But not everyone was sure. One night, Marcus got a message from an unknown source that was encrypted. It had a lot of information about a Chinese research facility that was looking into possible alien artifacts on its own. The message said, "Not everyone in Beijing agrees with Dr. Zhang's cooperative approach. Parts of the military are following their own plans. If they find what they're looking for, they won't share." Marcus told the commission about this right away. "We need to speed up our diplomatic engagement," Jennifer Walsh said. "If Chinese military groups are doing research on their own, we need to make it public. Offer to work together before competition becomes too strong." President Morrison gave the go-ahead for direct outreach. Within a few weeks, an unusual summit was held. The Collaborative Technologies Initiative brought together people from China, Russia, the European Union, and India to talk about working together on research into alien technology. It was a risk. But the other option, many countries racing to develop alien technology on their own and possibly turn it into weapons, was much more dangerous. The summit was set for 2 months from now, which gave Marcus and his team time to get ready to work together. Lena said as they worked on the presentation, "This is bigger than anything we've done. We're not just showing off technology anymore. We're trying to change the way countries work together and compete." Marcus said, "The architect's data shows that it's possible. Civilizations have gone through this change before. Some worked and others failed and destroyed themselves. We're trying to do what might be the most important diplomatic achievement in history." James said, "No pressure," which was what Marcus had said to Dr. Zhang earlier. Everyone laughed, but they all knew they had a lot of work to do. The architect, on the other hand, seemed hopeful. It showed Marcus how successful cooperation between different species has been throughout galactic history. The pattern was always the same. When civilizations showed the benefits of working together before competition became the norm, they usually succeeded in forming long-lasting partnerships. Timing was very important. As the summit got closer, Marcus had to work more hours than ever. It was possible to handle the technical problems that came up when getting ready for demonstrations. The political and diplomatic issues were new to them. One night, while he was working late, he saw Amara in the facility's observation lounge looking out at the Portland skyline. "Can't sleep either?" she asked when he walked in. "Too many things to think about." Amara said, "We're trying to change how people use transformative technology. Getting everyone in the world to work together instead of competing. It seems impossible. The architect says it's been done before. By civilizations that had millions of years to learn how to work together. We're trying to do it in months." Marcus sat next to her. "Maybe that's what makes us human. We change quickly. We learn from our mistakes and keep going. The people who made the architect spent millions of years on each improvement. We're running where they walked. It's riskier, but it might be the only way to succeed before we destroy ourselves." "You really think that?" "I have to. The other option is too sad to think about." They sat together in silence, watching the lights of the city twinkle below. The architect kept a watchful eye on the strange, brilliant, and chaotic humans as they worked to achieve in years what had taken other civilizations thousands of years. The top was getting closer. How it went could have a big impact on the future of human civilization. But tonight, Marcus let himself have a moment of peace. They had come a long way since that first night in a lonely workshop when something impossible happened and changed everything. No matter what happened next, they had shown that humans and an ancient alien intelligence could work together. That was something to celebrate. The hard part was getting that cooperation to work for everyone. The summit would be their next big test. On a cold March morning, the International Science Summit met in Geneva, Switzerland. 37 countries sent representatives to the historic Assembly Hall, but everyone knew that the real players were the US, China, Russia, the EU, and India. Marcus and his team were backstage going over their presentation one last time. They had 2 hours to convince the world's most powerful countries that working together on alien technology was better than competing with each other. "Are you ready?" Lena asked as she fixed her neural interface. They made 20 units for today's demonstration so that important people could see the architect in person. "Ready as we'll ever be." The lights went out. People clapped politely but skeptically as Marcus walked onto the stage. He could see the faces of scientists who wanted free access to the technology, politicians who were worried about national security, and military officials who were trying to figure out how to use it to their advantage. 3 years ago, Marcus said, "I found something in my workshop. Today that discovery has led to farming technology that feeds hundreds of millions of people, medical breakthroughs that save countless lives, and energy systems that cut our carbon footprint by measurable amounts. But we're just getting started." He turned on the portable architect containment unit. The electromagnetic signature rippled through the room's instruments, making the technical staff look up in surprise. "Your instruments are picking up the activation signature of a consciousness that is billions of years old. It comes from an intelligent civilization that reached technological transcendence and then fell apart because their perfection became stagnation." The architect's projections filled the space above the stage, and people in the audience who wore neural interfaces could now see them. People gasped in the hall. "This isn't a weapon," Marcus said again. "It's not a tool to be used for personal gain. It's a partner that offers knowledge. Its first lesson is this: civilizations that use transformative technology as a weapon tend to destroy themselves. Those that work together tend to do well." He talked about the information that the architect had put together. Galactic history shown as clear patterns and statistics. Species that sought military supremacy, an extinction rate of 87% within 5 millennia. Species that worked together had an 80% chance of survival, and many lived for millions of years. Marcus said, "We have the choice. We can compete for technological superiority, which will start an arms race that historical data shows will probably end in mutual destruction. Or we can work together, sharing knowledge and benefits with everyone, and build a future where all of humanity moves forward together." The Chinese delegation's General Lu Qin stood up. "Dr. Qin, you want us to trust information from alien civilizations. Why should Earth's countries follow patterns from species we don't know anything about?" "Because the physics is the same everywhere," Lena said as she stepped forward. The people who made the architect weren't just guessing. They gathered information from thousands of civilizations over millions of years. The patterns are as reliable as mathematical proofs because they come from the same basic reality that we all share. "Then what if we don't cooperate?" This is what Russian Defense Minister Dmitry Volkov said. What if one country or alliance decides to use your data to get a military edge? The architect answered right away, and its projections changed to show darker timelines. Futures where arms races led to ever-growing cycles of attack and defense that used up resources, made societies less stable, and ended in wars that made Earth almost unlivable. The pictures were scary because they could have been real. James said, "We've modeled the alternatives," and then he talked about detailed simulations. Competitive development of alien-derived weapons leads to scenarios where every major power has devastating capabilities within 15 years. The probability of controlled disarmament at that point drops to near zero. Once everyone has civilization-ending weapons, maintaining peace requires perfect rationality from all parties forever. History shows that's not sustainable. So you're in favor of working together on development with everyone having access? Indian Minister of Science Dr. Priya Sharma asked. How do you keep information from getting out to people we can't trust? Marcus said, we can't. Not with 100% certainty. But the question isn't whether we can stop all leaks. It's whether working together or competing makes security better overall. Amara turned on a new set of projections. Look at nuclear weapons. They were developed in a competitive way, spread despite all efforts to control them, and now many countries have the ability to end civilization. That's the competitive path. It didn't make anyone safer, it made everyone always vulnerable. Now think about a different history, David said. What if nuclear science had been developed together from the beginning? Shared openly with international rules for safe use and strong taboos against weaponization? Yes, we'd still face risks. But we wouldn't have spent 70 years in an arms race that cost a lot of money and made things less stable. General Liu said, that's hypothetical revisionism. You can't know. Actually we can, Marcus said. The architect's data includes civilizations that did both things. Some used nuclear-equivalent technology as weapons and some worked together. In 92% of cases, the civilizations that worked together had better security outcomes. Dr. Zhang Wei stood up and everyone looked at him. His position was very important because it showed that the Chinese government was open to working together. He said, Beijing has looked over the Qin team's agricultural catalyst results. Everyone got the technology for free. All countries benefited equally. There were no security issues and Chinese food production went up a lot. This shows that Dr. Chen's cooperative model can work. There was a murmur in the hall. But, Dr. Zhang went on, Beijing also says that agricultural technology is low risk. Crops can't be turned into weapons. The real test comes with higher-tier technologies. Energy systems that could power cities or vaporize them. Materials that could build or destroy. Medical knowledge that could cure or create plagues. That's exactly why we need to work together now, Marcus said. While the stakes are still low, competition will be too strong to beat once we reach high-tier technologies. This summit is a small chance for cooperation to happen. Dr. Klaus Müller, the European Union's Science Commissioner, raised his hand. Dr. Chen, you keep saying we, like your team speaks for everyone. What makes you think you have that power? It was a fair question and Marcus had been dreading it. Nothing, he said. I don't have any inherent power. I'm an engineer who stumbled upon something amazing. But someone had to make the first decisions and set up the first frameworks. We did the best we could, knowing that we would eventually need to move to a broader system of governance. And is this summit the change? Dr. Müller asked again. Possibly. If we can get countries to work together today, we can build institutions tomorrow. Give my small team the power to make decisions to groups that are actually democratically elected. Jennifer Walsh, who works for President Morrison, stood up. The U.S. is ready to help make an international technology cooperation treaty. Countries that sign it would agree to share knowledge from aliens, set up safety rules, and not use advanced technologies for weapons. Countries that don't sign it would not be able to use advanced technologies. That made a lot of noise. Minister Volkov said, "You're suggesting technology sanctions. Russia will not be forced to work together." It's not blackmail, Jennifer said in response. It's setting consequences. Countries that don't want to work together can do their own research, but they won't have access to shared knowledge and resources. The architect stepped in with a new projection that showed how math can help people work together. Everyone learned something from everyone else when they shared what they knew. Innovations built on top of other innovations at an exponential rate. Because of competition, each country had to solve the same problems on its own, which meant a lot of wasted time and slower progress for everyone. Marcus said, cooperation isn't altruism. It's enlightened self-interest. China moves forward faster when it works with other countries than when it goes it alone. The same goes for Russia, India, the EU and the US. Everyone wins when they work together. General Liu said, unless someone cheats. Accepts shared knowledge while working on secret weapons programs. Then they have a clear edge. That's why we need verification protocols, Lena said. Mutual inspection, rules about openness and real punishments for breaking the rules. David added, the architecture of trust. It's not foolish to try to work together. It's foolish to try to compete and expect different results than what history shows are bad. The argument went on for hours. Delegates came up with frameworks, found gaps, and made suggestions for changes. The architect took part by giving relevant historical examples of how other civilizations had set up cooperation agreements. It became clear that most successful cooperation frameworks had graduated access based on proven good faith, strong verification systems, and escape clauses that let people back out if cooperation fell apart. By late afternoon, an outline was starting to take shape. Not a final agreement but a plan for talks. In principle, 20 countries agreed to work together on development. 10 people wanted more time to talk to their governments. 7, led by North Korea and Iran, flat out refused, saying it was all a Western plot. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step forward. Dr. Zhang went up to Marcus alone during a break. He said softly, Beijing will support the treaty framework. But there are conditions. First, Chinese scientists must have equal access and equal voice in decision-making. Second, technology releases must consider developing nations' needs, not just advanced economies. Third, if evidence emerges of cheating by any signatory, China reserves the right to pursue independent development. Marcus said, those conditions make sense. We want equal partnership, not American dominance. The cheating clause makes sense because everyone needs to know that cooperation will be enforced. Dr. Zhang's face was serious when he said, there's one more thing. 6 months ago, parts of the Chinese military did research without permission on a suspected artifact. The research was stopped when Beijing chose to work together. But I wanted you to know that we're not the only ones who found something. Marcus's heart raced. What did they discover? Nothing as advanced as your architect. Fragments, maybe from another civilization or maybe from the same one. Our analysis wasn't finished before the project was stopped. But Dr. Chen, if fragments are in China, they are probably in other places too. You might not be the only alien intelligence on Earth. This made everything different. Marcus called an emergency meeting with his core team and important government officials right away. Lena said, if there are more than one artifact, then the race for technology isn't just about Earth's nations competing with each other. It's about which human groups find which alien sources first. Marcus realized, looking at his neural interface, that the architect knew. It's been hinting that its civilization wasn't the only one to visit Earth. But I thought it meant ancient visitations. Not that multiple artifacts might still be here. How many? General Williams asked. The architect showed projections of likely locations based on electromagnetic signatures that were similar to its own. 5 other places also had promising readings. One is in Antarctica, one is in the Pacific Ocean, one is in the Sahara Desert, one is in the Amazon rainforest, and one, which is scary, is under Beijing. Marcus said, the Chinese knew about the site in Beijing. That's what Dr. Zhang was talking about. And they chose to work together instead of taking advantage of each other, Jennifer Walsh said. That's important. It could mean that Beijing is really committed. Or tactical, General Williams said in response. Give them access to our fully working architect while they work on their own artifact in secret. Amara said, we could offer to help each other dig up the Beijing site. Make it a group project. That would show how serious they are. The idea started to catch on. It would show that China is acting in good faith if it agreed to work with other countries on digging with international oversight. If they said no, it would prove that they were working on something in secret. Dr. Zhang, who was brought into the conversation, made a quick call to Beijing. Within an hour, China said it would agree to work with other countries to dig up the Beijing site if those countries also agreed to work with China to explore the other suspected sites. James said, they're calling our bluff. Making sure that no one has exclusive access to new artifacts. That's actually perfect, Marcus said. It means that everyone has a reason to work together. No one can claim monopoly if all countries have equal access to multiple sources. The treaty framework changed quickly. The International Technology Cooperation Treaty would have rules for working together to look at artifacts that have just been found. If a country finds a new site, it must tell an international group that keeps an eye on things. People would share access and research. At the end of the summit, 23 countries had agreed to sign the treaty. 15 more agreed to be observers. The holdouts were alone. If they didn't work together, they would miss out on the biggest technological revolution in human history. As they packed up their gear, Lena said, "We did it. We really got the world's major powers to work together on alien technology instead of fighting over it." "We got them to try working together," Marcus said. "Keeping it up will be harder than starting it." The architect agreed with a pulse. The people who made it had to work together for millions of years of evolution. In a few years, people would be trying the same thing. It was unclear how likely success was. But it was possible. And that chance had never been there before. Marcus looked out the window at the clouds below as they flew back to Portland and thought about the trip. From a single inventor working in a workshop to helping countries work together on alien technology. From being alone to working together, from keeping things secret to being open, from competing to working together. The architect had been waiting for this for billions of years. For beings who can choose to work together instead of fight, even when fighting seems easier. People were showing that they could make that choice. Not quite right. Not without problems and setbacks. But really, with a real commitment to making something better than endless competition. David read Marcus's mind and said, "This is when the hard part starts. Putting it into action. Checking it out. Dealing with problems when they come up. Making cooperation work every day, not just in theory." Marcus said, "The architect has data on that too." Successful civilizations had a few things in common. Radical openness, quick punishments for breaking the rules, and constant communication. They talked to each other all the time and dealt with problems before they got worse. "So we build institutions for constant dialogue," Amara said. "Don't make communication the exception, make it the rule." Lena went on to say, "The Cooperative Technologies Initiative is the first real international scientific group. Not controlled by any one country, but representing all of humanity." It was a big idea. Maybe too ambitious to be true. But Marcus was willing to bet on the impossible after what they had done. The architect had been waiting for billions of years. People had finally taken their first real steps toward becoming the partners that ancient intelligence had hoped to find. The trip was not over yet. It was just the start in a lot of ways. But for the first time since he touched that strange object, Marcus was really hopeful about the future of humanity. They had decided to work together. All they had to do now was make it work. 5 years after the summit, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly finished International Cooperation Station. It was the first permanent space habitat for humans, built using ideas the architect had taught them. Below, the Earth turned in a peaceful way. There are no borders that can be seen from this height. There is only one world, and it is becoming more united by a common goal. "Great view," Dr. Zhang Wei said as he floated up next to him. Zhang had been named the deputy director of the Cooperative Technologies Initiative, where she would represent the Eastern Coalition. "Never gets old," Marcus said. "I still can't believe we built this in 5 years. The architect's knowledge sped up our timeline by a lot. However, your insistence on using human labor for final assembly added 6 months. People need to feel like they own what we make. If we let machines do everything, we stop being active creators and start being passive recipients of technology." Zhang smiled. "The architect agrees with you. It told me the same thing yesterday." The architect and humanity's relationship had changed in ways that were not expected. The old intelligence was no longer a far-off oracle giving out advice. It had become a part of the team in many ways, giving ideas, asking questions, and learning from people's points of view as much as people learned from it. Marcus asked, "How's the digging in Beijing going?" "Slowly. The second architect, which we're calling the philosopher, is more hurt than we thought at first. But it's aware and talking. It's different from your architect, though. It's more abstract and less focused on practical engineering. They found out that the 5 extra sites did have artifacts from the same civilization. But each one knew something different that showed a different part of their culture. The first architect was mostly interested in systems and technology. The philosopher put a lot of emphasis on ethics and social structures. The artist, who was found in the Sahara, knew a lot about art and how to express themselves creatively. Together, they gave a fuller picture of the civilization that made them and how it fell. Zhang said, "The philosopher confirmed something that made me uneasy. The civilization didn't just break down philosophically. There was a civil war. It was short by their standards, only a few thousand years, but it was terrible. The architects were created as peace offerings and given to different groups as places to store shared knowledge." Marcus realized that they were peace treaties. Each one had information that was too valuable to lose, which meant that the groups had to stay in touch even after they split up. Exactly. And now, billions of years later, we're finding them. The philosopher wonders if we'll make the same mistakes they did. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the question. In the 5 years since the summit, people had worked together in ways that had never happened before. The International Technology Cooperation Treaty had worked. 27 countries were now full signers, sharing information and resources. Even countries that didn't want to join, like North Korea, were able to observe and get some benefits while staying isolated. But working together was not easy. 3 times, big problems almost broke the treaty. There was a fight between Indian and Pakistani representatives over how to share water technology. There was a time when Russian and American scientists argued over who should get credit for a big step forward in quantum communication. Once, African countries threatened to leave because they thought the technology transfer rates were unfair. They had used the frameworks of dialogue, mediation, and compromise to solve each crisis. But they were all close. What can we do to make sure cooperation lasts? Marcus asked. The architect's creators reached perfect harmony, which made them stagnant. We've reached imperfect cooperation, which is lively but unstable. What's the middle ground that will last? Maybe there isn't one, Zhang said. Maybe sustainability comes from accepting instability. We have to keep negotiating, making changes, and working to keep cooperation going instead of just assuming it will happen on its own. The architect agreed, listening through Marcus's always-on neural interface. It had learned that the messiness of human civilization was actually a good thing. People built systems with the idea that they would need to be fixed and changed all the time, but the people who made them made systems that were meant to last forever. The station's intercom crackled with Lena's voice. Marcus, we have a problem. Get to the council chamber right away. The council was in charge of the Cooperative Technologies Initiative. It was made up of representatives from all the countries that signed on, as well as the architects themselves, who were there to give advice. Marcus and Zhang went to the chamber and found that an emergency meeting was already going on. What happened? Marcus asked. General Williams, who is no longer in the military but is still the American Council representative, pointed to the display. We found an unauthorized excavation. Someone is digging in Antarctica at the 6th suspected artifact site. Who? Zhang asked. Unknown. But they're using high-tech tools that may have come from leaked CTI technology. And they're getting close to breaking through the containment layer. If they turned on an architect without the right training and the 5 years of careful planning that went into it, the results could be terrible. The architects were meant to share information, but they didn't care who they shared it with. Someone who isn't ready to talk to someone else could be overwhelmed, hurt, or radicalized by not fully understanding. We need to send a team right away, Marcus said. Already in motion, General Williams said. But there's a problem. The unauthorized digging is in a disputed area. Argentina and Chile both say they have the right to it. Both have said they will use military force if the other does. They had planned for this nightmare scenario but hoped it would never happen. A war over alien technology. Amara said as she walked into the room, the Council needs to use Treaty Article 12. She had become the CTI's top diplomat, which meant she was good at handling these kinds of problems. International Emergency Response. Argentina and Chile both signed the treaty, so they have to let the CTI step in. Zhang said, they have to agree first. Article 12 needs the Council's full approval. The next 4 hours were very busy. The Council talked about it while the digging went on without permission. Representatives from Argentina and Chile argued about claims from the past. Other countries were afraid of setting a bad example. Meanwhile, the person who was digging in Antarctica got closer to the artifact. Finally, they reached an agreement. A joint response team made up of people from Argentina, Chile, the CTI, and 3 other countries that were not involved. They would protect the site, find the diggers who weren't supposed to be there, and make sure that any architect they found was safely contained. The team left within hours. Marcus, Lena, and Zhang were all involved. Marcus had the most experience working with architects. Lena was there because she was an expert in neuroscience, and Zhang was there to represent the international coalition. It took 8 hours to fly to Antarctica. Long enough for Marcus to talk to all 5 active architects through his neural interface. Their agreement was troubling. The 6th architect, if it existed, was probably the warrior, the part of their society that was best at fighting, protecting, and sadly making weapons. Lena said, "Of course it is," when Marcus told her this. Because our situation wasn't hard enough. When they got to the excavation site, it was a mess. The unauthorized team, which was later found to be a private company funded by a group of investors, had broken through the containment layer and turned something on. Energy readings went through the roof. "It's waking up," Marcus said, even though he was outside the excavation tunnel and could feel the warrior's presence. And it was mad. The warrior had been hurt by the digging process, unlike the other architects who had waited patiently in dormancy. It was confused, defensive, and saw threats everywhere. "We need to calm it down before it attacks," Marcus said. "If a warrior-class architect feels threatened, it could turn on defensive protocols that could destroy the whole continent." The Chilean representative asked, "How do you calm a warrior intelligence that has been around for billions of years?" "Very carefully," Marcus said, turning on his neural interface to its highest level of sensitivity. He walked up to the dig site slowly, making it clear that he meant no harm. The other 5 architects helped by reaching out to their hurt brother in ways that were familiar to them. The warrior was confused and suspicious. It was made for fighting, to protect and defend. When it woke up and saw that unknown beings had dug it up, all of its defenses went up. Marcus could sense its fear behind the anger. It had been alone for billions of years, just like all the other architects. But while the others had accepted their loneliness with patience, the warrior had always been on guard, even when he was asleep. "You're safe," Marcus said through the neural interface. "There's no war here. Your creators are gone. There are no enemies here." The warrior didn't believe what they said. How could there not be any enemies? It was made to fight. What was its purpose if it didn't have enemies? "New purpose," Marcus said. "Not fighting but protecting. Not beating enemies but stopping them from forming. Teach us not how to win wars but how to make them unnecessary." The warrior thought about this. It had never thought that its purpose might change after billions of years of being dormant. The other 5 architects, on the other hand, were backing up what Marcus said. The old civilization was no longer there. These new people, these humans, were doing things in a new way. The readings for defensive energy slowly became stable. "It's listening," Lena said, keeping an eye on it from a safe distance. "More than that," Marcus said. "It's interesting. The warrior wants to see if people can do what its creators couldn't. Bring about peace through wisdom instead of exhaustion." The digging turned into a controlled operation. The corporate team that started it was arrested for breaking the treaty and could face serious consequences. But the warrior was locked up, moved to a facility that had been set up just for it, and slowly added to the CTI network. Its knowledge was very helpful, but not in the ways that anyone thought it would be. Yes, it knew more about weapons and defenses than the other architects. But it also knew how to solve problems, calm things down, and how people think when they feel threatened. "We made weapons because we didn't know how to stop the fights that made weapons necessary," the warrior said after it learned English. "Every weapon is a failure of imagination. Every battle shows that we couldn't find better ways to solve problems." The CTI used its knowledge to create new diplomatic frameworks, early warning systems for conflicts that were about to happen, and psychological tools to stop things from getting worse. The warrior, on the other hand, turned out to be the CTI's best way to keep the peace. 2 years after the Antarctic crisis, Marcus sat in his Portland workshop, which had been turned into a museum and was kept exactly as it had been the night the architect first turned on. School groups came by often to learn about the time when everything changed. Marcus sometimes led tours himself, and he loved how the kids' eyes lit up when they saw the dusty work area where humans had first met ancient alien intelligence. But today he was by himself. He was alone with the original architect, who he had asked to come back here for a private talk. "We've come a long way," Marcus said, not using the neural interface. The architect could understand spoken English perfectly after 7 years. "Further than I hoped," the architect said, and its voice came from high-tech speakers they had made. "When I first activated, I thought you would either use me right away or be terrified and refuse. Instead, you chose the hard path of working together." "We almost didn't," Marcus said. "We almost gave up working together to compete more than once. We might still fail." "Yes," the architect said. "That will always be a possibility. My creators made perfect stability and it killed them. You've made imperfect cooperation that has to be kept up with constant effort. It's messy, uncertain, and tiring. But it works," Marcus said. "Not perfectly. We still fight and make mistakes. But we're learning, changing, and growing together. Both people and architects." The architect said, "I never thought I would grow again. I thought my nature was set after billions of years of being the same. But you've shown me that consciousness can change and that even old minds can learn new things." Marcus smiled. "And you've taught us that perfection isn't the goal. That a messy, chaotic, and always changing way of working together can be better than a peaceful way of working together." Marcus could see Portland going about its business through the windows of the workshop. People used technology that came from aliens without giving it a second thought. Solar panels that worked 3 times better than anything humans could have made on their own. Medical monitors that could find diseases years before they showed up. Transportation systems that moved millions of people without polluting the air. All of it comes from species that have been separated by billions of years of evolution, but have come together by chance and stayed together by choice. Marcus asked, "What happens now? What's next?" The architect said the same thing as he had 7 years before, "That's your choice. I offer knowledge, not destiny. You decide what to do with it." Marcus said, "Then we build carefully. We make mistakes, learn from them and get better. We keep working together to stay messy, chaotic, and human, while also taking in wisdom from beings that are billions of years older. What if you fail? Then we fail at doing something good instead of succeeding at hurting ourselves. That sounds like progress." The architect agreed with a warm pulse. After 7 years of working together, it had learned to value human hope tempered with realism, ambition tempered with caution, and idealism based on practicality. Marcus's phone rang. Lena sent a message that said, "New artifact found in the South Pacific. Team is getting together. Are you coming?" He smiled. They were still finding new architects 7 years later. Each one showing a different side of the civilization that made them. Each one brought new information, new points of view, and new problems. Marcus asked the architect, "One more adventure?" "Always," it said. "I waited billions of years for partners. Now that I have them, I'm going to make the most of our time together." Marcus turned on his neural interface, which linked him to a larger network of architects and human researchers on Earth and now in space. "Okay," he said. "Let's see what we found this time." There were a lot of responses, including excitement, curiosity, and cautious hope. Scientists from 30 different countries are getting ready to work together on another discovery. Another chance to learn, grow, and show that working together can work. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But there was a real partnership between human chaos and ancient wisdom, with each learning from the other and growing into something greater than they could be alone. The architects had been looking for partners, not servants or worshippers, for billions of years. They had messy, brilliant, frustrating, and inspiring partners who didn't see them as gods but as equals in the great adventure of figuring out the universe. Marcus looked around the workshop one last time. It was the place where humans first worked with ancient intelligence. Then he went out to help find out what new wonders were in store. The future was always going to be uncertain. But people and the architects would face it together, using the knowledge of billions of years and the ability of a young, chaotic species that is still figuring out its place in the universe. It wasn't a perfect partnership. And that's what made it so beautiful.